Welcome everyone to what would be our hymn sing, our Christmas carol hymn sing. Of course, we can't do that here in person, but I thought we would still try and do it via the wonders of the World Wide Web. Thank you to all those who sent a few selections in. Those, along with a couple of selections of our own, will be what is included in our video for this hymn sing. Not all the selections, I should say, that were suggested made it in, and I apologize for that, but a couple of them were just a little out of our range and didn't want to butcher them. So we did what we could, and I hope you would enjoy that. Interspersed amongst the hymns will also be a few poems or other stories, not your typical Christmas stuff, just because we've been hearing that all the way through Advent, and we will hear it again in its entirety on Christmas Eve and through the Christmas season. So I thought this might be an opportunity to share a few readings that are a little less typical. So I do hope you enjoy this video. I hope that you sing and enjoy the singing and enjoy the stories and the readings. And yeah, just have fun with it. It's always a fun evening when we gather here, and it won't be quite as much fun, but I do hope you do have fun singing, and who cares who's around, just sing at the top of your lungs. That's what a hymn sing is for.
Sing
Love Came Down at Christmas by Christina Rossetti. Love came down at Christmas, love all lovely, love divine. Love was born at Christmas, stars and angels gave the sign. Worship we the Godhead, love incarnate, love divine. Worship we our Jesus, but wherewith for sacred sign? Love shall be our token, love be yours and love be mine. Love to God and all men, love for plea and gift and sign.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright. Round yon virgin, mother and child, holy infant, so tender and mild. Sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night. Shepherds quake at the sight. Glory stream from heaven afar, and the hosts sing Hallelujah. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love's pure light, radiant beams from your holy face, with the dawn of redeeming grace. Jesus, Lord, at your birth. Jesus, Lord, at your birth. Angels we have heard on high, sweetly singing o'er the plains, and the mountains in reply, echoing their joyous strains. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Shepherds white as
The First Christmas by Marion Swinger. It never snows at Christmas in that dry and dusty land. Instead of freezing blizzards, there are palms and drifting sands. And years ago a stable and a most unusual star, and 3 wise men who followed it, by camel, not by car. While sleepy on the quiet hills, a shepherd gave a cry. He'd seen a crowd of angels in the silent, starlit sky. In the stable, ox and ass stood very still and calm, and gazed upon the baby, safe and snug in Mary's arms. And Joseph, lost in shadows, face lit by an oil lamp's glow, stood wondering that first Christmas day 2,000 years ago.
In fields where
Little Tree by E. E. Cummings. Little tree, little silent Christmas tree, you are so little, you are more like a flower. Who found you in the green forest, and were you very sorry to come away? See, I will comfort you, because you smell so sweetly. I will kiss your cool bark and hug you safe and tight, just as your mother would. Don't be afraid. Look, the spangles that sleep all the year in a dark box, dreaming of being taken out and allowed to shine. The balls, the chains, red and gold, the fluffy threads. Put out your little arms, and I'll give them all to you to hold. Every finger shall have its ring, and there won't be a single place dark or unhappy. Then, when you're quite dressed, you'll stand in the window for everyone to see, and how they'll stare. Oh, but you'll be very proud. And my little sister and I will take hands, and looking up at our beautiful tree, we'll dance and sing, Noel, Noel. Three Kings by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. 3 kings came riding from far away, Melchior and Gaspar and Balthazar. 3 wise men out of the east were they, and they traveled by night, and they slept by day, for their guide was a beautiful, wonderful star. The star was so beautiful, large and clear, that all the other stars of the sky became a white mist in the atmosphere, and by this time they knew that the coming was near of the prince foretold in the prophecy. 3 caskets they bore on their saddle bows, 3 caskets of gold with golden keys. Their robes were of crimson silk, with rows of bells and pomegranates and fir bellows, their turbans like blossoming almond trees. And so the 3 kings rode into the west, through the dusk of the night, over hill and dell, and sometimes they nodded with beard or on breast, and sometimes talked as they paused to rest, with the people they met at some wayside well. Of the child that is born, said Balthazar, good people, I pray you, tell us the news. For we in the east have seen his star, and have ridden fast, and have ridden far, to have find and worship the King of the Jews. And the people answered, you ask in vain, we know of no king but Herod the Great. They thought the wise men were men insane, as they spurred the horses across the plain, like riders in haste who cannot wait. And when they came to Jerusalem, Herod the Great, who had heard this thing, sent for the wise men and questioned them, and said, go down into Bethlehem and bring me tidings of this new king. So they rode away, and the star stood still, the only one in the gray of morn. Yes, it stopped. It stood still of its own free will, right over Bethlehem on the hill, the city of David where Christ was born. And the 3 kings rode through the gate and the guard, through the silent street, till their horses turned and neighed as they entered the great inn-yard. But the windows were closed and the doors were barred, and only a light in the stable burned. And the cradle there in the scented hay, in the air made sweet by the breath of king, the little child in the manger lay, the child that would be king one day, of a kingdom not human but divine. His mother Mary of Nazareth sat watching beside his place of rest, watching the even flow of his breath, for the joy of life and the terror of death were mingled together in her breast. They laid their offerings at his feet. The gold was their tribute to a king. The frankincense with its odor sweet was for the priest, the paraclete, the myrrh for the body's burying. And the mother wondered and bowed her head, and sat as still as a statue of stone. Her heart was troubled yet comforted, remembering what the angel had said, of an endless reign and of David's throne. Then the kings rode out of the city gate, with a clatter of hoofs in proud array, but they went not back to Herod the Great, for they knew his malice and feared his hate, and returned to their homes by another way.
Shepherds kept and his cradle was a stone. With the poor and meek and lowly, lived on earth a Savior holy. Nor eyes at last shall see him through his own redeeming love. For that child so dear and gentle is our Lord in heaven above, and he leads his children on to the place where he is gone. Not in that lowly stable, with the oxen standing by, we shall see him, but in heaven, Sat at God's right hand on high. There his children gather round, bright like stars with glory crowned.
A reading from the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to the light, so that all might believe through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came into being through him, yet the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, and his own people did not accept him. But to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God, who were born not of blood, or of the will of the flesh, or of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh and lived among us, and we have seen his glory, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth.
I am so glad each Christmas Eve, the night of Jesus' birth. Then like the sun, the stars shone forth, and angels sang on earth. He dwells again in heaven's realm,
Now may God bless you and keep you this day and forevermore. Have a blessed Christmas and a very blessed New Year.